Hey everyone, welcome back to the Virginia Venture Connect series. My name is Justin Ritter, co-host of the series on behalf of the Charlottesville Business Innovation Council and CIT, the Center for Innovative Technology. Welcome. Today we have a special guest, Jeff Dion, founder capital strategist at WeFunder. Hey Jeff.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Title III crowdfunding has gone through some amazing transformative regulatory changes within the last few months. WeFunder is a major platform for Title III crowdfunding offerings. Could you please tell the audience a little bit about WeFunder and in particular your role within it?
Sure. So, equity crowdfunding, it's been around for about 5 years now in legitimacy, but you're right. The last, 2 months, there were some major changes that happened. So crowdfunding in general from the big picture means that it's just another way for folks to raise capital for their business, whether they're a coffee shop or the next biotech company or a big SaaS company, with all the same legitimacies of going to VC or the bank. Except that you raise your capital through your network and then our network of 1 million investors on WeFunder. The big changes that happened recently are really shaking the game up a bit because since everything's been going well the last 5 years, they think the SEC really sort of like stepped their toes in 5 years ago, like, all right, fine, we'll let you do this thing. But now they said everything's been going great. So they upped the ability for founders to raise now $5 million a year through Regulation CF, which means $5 million from unaccredited investors. And prior it was $1,070,000. So it's a pretty big jump now. We're seeing like full Series A raises on WeFunder and even parts of Series B raises that they're cutting out for the crowd, which is really neat. And then me in particular, we're kind of a company without titles, so I just title myself a founder capital strategist. And my role is essentially just to strategize with founders around their next capital raise. I mean, equity crowdfunding isn't necessarily for everyone. I think it's for a lot of folks, but sometimes it's not the right time and sometimes it's time to push it down the line. So I try to just talk to folks about, is it the right route for them? Is it the right time for them? And then strategize around the raise when it is the right time.
Awesome. So if I were a founder and I was considering Title III crowdfunding and I had the opportunity to meet you and we were going through the analysis of whether to use a Title III crowdfund or not, what type of companies are more ideal crowdfunded companies versus not?
Totally. So, I mean, again, like I think, we have coffee shops that raise that, have founders have never started a company before. We've got SaaS companies that raise that, are in the MVP development stage. And they raise. It can be a tough road though. I think the ideal person, the ideal founder, the ideal company is a founder or company that has a decent sized network. I think in crowdfunding in general, your network is sort of the core of what makes a successful raise. And that network is broad, right? I think sometimes we talk about network and we just think about like your friends and family, and that's not at all what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, all those past coworkers. I'm talking about all your LinkedIn connections. I'm talking about all your customers, your partners, that you organize, that you work with in your organization. That broader network, right? That's equity crowdfunding is all about. So saying like, hey, like, we're creating an amazing business. Come be a part of it, come be a piece of the journey, like support us, and then, come out on the other end with hopefully a really awesome financial upside for yourself. So it's about getting the word out to everybody that you possibly know about this campaign. That's the key. So I wouldn't, we really don't even dial in on, I don't think, specific industries per se. It's all really just about that network and the founder's ability to reach that network.
So there are multiple platforms that offer Title III crowdfunded raises. What, in your opinion, makes WeFunder different or distinguishable from the other platforms?
Yeah, I mean, I think so from a broad perspective, and And from like I think the two things that I think are maybe they're not the most important, but I think they're the two things that I think a lot of people get drawn to WeFunder for, is that we're the industry leaders. So, and I can hit on that. And then we're also, I think, just an honest company. So by industry leaders, I mean, like, we have 40% market share. We've had that for, multiple quarters over quarters since the beginning. We were the ones, our CEO, Nick, was the one who, back in 2012, when he started petitioning the government to make this thing real, was the one who was knocking on doors and getting signatures for this thing. So, now we started from the beginning, and we were in Y Combinator, and now we've got 40% market share, and we're just rocking it out, right? 1,500 founders have raised on WeFunder, which is massive. 300 million total raised by those 1,500 founders, and we've actually had 5 billion raised post WeFunder, which I think is actually a super exciting stat when you really think about that. That these are like super successful companies, and that crowdfunding like offers a lot of opportunity post its raise, and those are all industry leading numbers, right? And then from like an honest standpoint, I think we're an open platform, so when I say I'm a founder capital strategist, people talk to me, and technically I'm like the first line, when you come to WeFunder, but there's no gatekeeper here. Like, it's an open platform. We're here to democratize capital. We're a public benefit. We have a public benefit charter. We're a B Corp. And we stick to that, I think, to the core. I think that's one of the coolest things since I joined the company is recognizing that really does come through to the core. But we're all about just opening capital to as many people as possible. And that's kind of a differentiator, I think, with a lot of the other platforms, is that there's often like an approval process to get in, right? Which kind of like some of them really like mimic like going, through VC, which is to me just a bit odd, because crowdfunding is about you and your network and our network deciding if you're fundable, not 12 people in a room or 2 people in a room, right? That seems like it's just back to the days of like, a bunch of 60-year-old white guys in a room deciding if your business is fundable or not, right? So we're just about opening this thing up to say like, great, if you can start raising from your crowd and they're willing to back you, we're going to put you in front of our crowd. And if they're willing to back you, then those are the people who are going to make the decision on if you're backable. And then the last thing I'll say on Honest is that like a lot of the other platforms have raised outside money. There's I'd say one of our biggest competitors who actually thinks runs a wonderful platform as well in many regards, but they just raised like multiple millions of dollars through VC, while we just closed on an $8.5 million round through our platform recently. So I think that says a little something about like we're drinking our own Kool-Aid,
Awesome. So if I were a founder and I was looking for a platform and I decided Title III is the right avenue to raise money, let's say that I have some big checks that are coming in. And historically, I would do that separate from a Title III because I was trying to save money on a platform's fee, for example. Also, I'm trying to, with an accredited investor, for example, not have a cap on how much money they can raise, which I know has been negated due to the regulatory changes. Now, accrediteds can invest an unlimited amount in a Title III crowdfunded raise, which I think is
so cool.
Great. So if I'm putting it all together now, I've got these, a small circle of big checks, and I'm hoping with Title III crowdfunding to get a whole bunch of people with small checks. Can I mix them together into one raise? And if so, I know that WeFunder has a fee out there. Will there be a distinguishing allowance for self-brought, the big checks, if you will?
Yeah. This kind of leads into, I think, 2 important points, particularly about why WeFunder, why we're sort of, I think, leading the charge here, is that, since March 15th, we've now been able to use SPVs as a vehicle to wrap everything into. So this is where essentially you're going to have one lead investor, and then everybody else is going to invest into this one special purpose vehicle. It's like it's its own company, essentially, like its own LLC. WeFunder, Justin Reuter LLC. And then this everybody invests right into this SPV, and then this SPV is the item that actually invests into Ritter Law, for example, right? So that allows one line on the cap table, which is super clean, right? And also through this whole process is that you can take, to go back to your point, you can take accredited and unaccredited investors all through this same, Reg CF platform. And when I said before that you could raise up to 5 million, we're actually seeing a lot of folks now, like we had Legion M, for example, has raised $10 million with us at this point. And once you raise actually over 5 million, you can we can whip up a regulation D on the side, and we'll pull some of these accredited investors into this regulation D round, which opens up space for more unaccredited investors. So you could actually continue to raise onward and onward and onward from unaccredited investors as you go. I always recommend, actually, because this is actually a really good point. We've got a lot of folks who come to us and say like, oh, cool, but like, it's okay if I am also soliciting, from angels on the outside while I'm raising, money on WeFunder. And I said, yeah, 100%, but send them through the campaign, because, for us at WeFunder, we recognize that successful campaign is, and this is just crowdfunding in general, is always driven by like the founding team's network and their ability to create momentum, right? So the more momentum you can create, the more people are like, ooh, this is a train I want to get on, right? So for WeFunder, we say, if you have any of these accredited investors that are investing $25,000 or more, bring them through the platform, because we're not going to charge a fee on that. We want you to bring those folks to the platform so that it continues to fuel this campaign forward. And we've seen the success of that, of bringing these folks through.
That's very good to know. And I think very good, and can help create the fear of missing out, if you will, by showing greater gains through maybe pre-committed big checks from your pre-existing network before taking it out on a crowdfunded portal to the world, if you will.
It's a really good point. That's kind of one of the things we often recommend with folks as they come through and do a campaign, is like, you sort of want to work out your concentric circles, right? And one of those things is, if you've got those big checks like in the bag, if you think you can get them through right in the beginning, when we sort of promote you to the WeFunder crowd, to already see that momentum, that big momentum in the beginning, is really big.
To circle back to your opening capital comment from earlier, when you were talking about your differentiating points of WeFunder versus other platforms, and again, going back to some hypotheticals, if I'm a listener and I'm a pre-revenue company, can I raise on WeFunder?
Yeah, again, like this is, it's the open platform. Anyone can raise on WeFunder within the realm of a legal company and not doing something weird and uncomfortable. But other than that, we're not deciding who's raising on WeFunder, at what stage they are. It doesn't quite matter to us. Yeah.
Do you care about the investment vehicle that's being offered?
So there are a couple things. Like for us, we use the Y Combinator safe, and we use the Cooley convertible note, and then we have our own revenue share contract as well. And you can use those. Most people just use those because they're the industry leading contracts. But you can also upload your own contract. That's totally fine. We'll take a peek through it just to make sure there's nothing weird in there. But you can use your own contract. And especially if you want to do a priced round, then you'll have to, you bring your own contract. We can obviously provide one for you, but you'd probably want your lawyer to be looking through that too. So very, very flexible in that sense.
Okay, so going back to some hypotheticals, thinking about the potential listeners to this video, what's the minimum threshold that you would need? You got a legal company, you have a concept, you've got all your economics, your legal instruments set out, how you want to do it. Is there a certain minimum amount of money that you need to pre-raise before even getting on the platform? And are there any other minimum requirements?
Yeah, I mean, from a minimum requirement, you're incorporated in the United States, and that's about it from that sense. But outside of that, I think, so I say that all these other companies have a vetting process, right? And they do. It's sort of like it's saying like, yes or no, we're deciding if your company's fundable or not. But for us, we're saying like, we're not going to decide if your company's fundable or not. But what we are going to do is we're going to say, if we're going to put you in front of our million investors, right, who, we want them to sort of like have some faith that these companies are trustworthy, then we're going to expect that you're going to at least bring $50,000 to the table before, we put you there, right? So, so that first 50,000 to raise is fully on the founder to get that momentum going. And then once you hit 50K, we'll put you in front of everybody else.
Okay. Somewhat related to that, and also related to the new regulatory changes, Title III crowdfunders are now able to test the waters. Can you test the waters to see if you can raise 50K?
Yeah, that's kind of that's what that space is all about. Actually, it's testing the waters is so cool. It's I don't think you've talked about this in the podcast before, have you?
No.
So it's yeah, it's really sweet. It now allows you on WeFunder, and for some reason we're one of the, I believe we're actually the only company that's really doing this right now, which is something that was made legal, as you mentioned, March 15th, which allows companies to begin raising capital immediately without having to have all their accounting work figured out, without having to have all their legal stuff figured out, without having to have all the compliance stuff ironed out. You can just upload a video, set your terms, put your pitch deck in, start raising money, and then in parallel do all the other stuff which will help you with. And WeFunder, like, we take a 7.5% success fee, and anybody who comes through this will do 6.5%. But that's going to cover, like, we're going to take care of filing that Form C for you too. You don't have to deal with any of that. And we're going to deal with all the disbursement of the funds in the end. If you do a revenue share model, we'll even disperse the funds for you on a quarterly basis. We're going to handle all the closing. Yeah, all that jazz.
Yeah. One-stop shop. That sounds pretty nice.
It is nice.
Yeah. Okay.
It's actually one of the cool things too with WeFunder. I think this is actually kind of a big differentiator too, is that we've built a lot of these things in house. So I kind of like, it's become, I mean, it's like obviously more challenging you can outsource things, and that makes your life actually a little bit easier, right? But for us to have that control, and when we really think about like where we want to go as a company long-term, we've built out like our financial distribution model in-house on the platform. We've built out our contract management in-house, all the K1 systems, all that stuff is built out in WeFunder, which I think is, important, because in the end, we're owning the process, and owning the process sort of like, it relieves liability, and it also increases reliability, I think, from the founders receiving their money on time, and removes any of the headaches down the line when it comes to liquidation events and new rounds of funding, when we're just going to handle it all.
Right. Yeah, well, I think what you guys are doing is great, and among the other platforms, for sure too. And I do think that maybe pre-regulatory changes of 2021, Title III crowdfunding was the wave of the future, and now I think it's the wave of the present. And I encourage all to give Jeff a call or email and see what WeFunder can do for you. Jeff, thank you.
My email is jeff@wefunder.com, and anybody listening to this is welcome to email me. I'm happy to talk to anyone.